Hello, hello. This is Tyson Farmer from TysonFarmer.com. This is going to be a fun one. Today's chord is one of my all-time personal favorites. It took me a while to figure out what to nickname this chord for today's lesson since it's in so many songs and used by so many artists throughout the mid to late 70s and to this day. I mean, it's in almost every single Michael Jackson song from that era.
Good inside. I've always wanted a girl.
So should I call it the Michael Jackson chord? It's in a huge list of Earth, Wind & Fire songs.
Deep inside we knew our love was true.
So should I call it the Earth, Wind & Fire chord? But there it is in YMCA. And Last Dance. And even Rod Stewart.
Ease my troubles, that's what you do.
Eventually, I realized that no one band or songwriter can really lay claim to this chord since it's so prevalent throughout that era. But although it's useful in many different music genres and can be spotted now and then in the wild almost anywhere, the lion's share of its use in Western musical history is squarely in disco music. So for today's lesson, I'm going to be talking about the 11 chord, or what I like to only half-jokingly call the disco chord. I could go on all day with this chord.
That's why I'm
In any case, can you hear how the chord kind of floats? It's great for building up to song sections like in September and YMCA, but it can be used almost anywhere in a song form as just another chord, like in Rock With You. This makes it super versatile. It's a chord that can potentially create both tension or neutrality depending on how you use it. It can just be used as an innocuous but tasty sounding filler chord, or it can be used as a big excitement building anticipation chord. I'll talk a little more about its use later, but let's go ahead and look at the chord now. Okay, here it is. I'm giving you the E or 6-string root version first since it's the most commonly used one. There is an A or 5th-string root version I'll show you in a minute though. As with many of the coolest sounding pop, soul, and jazz chords, this is a movable chord where you'll have to worry about selectively muting certain strings. But if you're playing this one right, the selective muting shouldn't be as difficult as others. Some of you may need to wrap your thumb around the neck a little bit to ensure that the pad of your index finger sort of rolls over to that first string to kill it. The chord tones for this chord are the root on that third finger, the flat 7th scale degree on the pinky, the 2nd scale degree on that middle finger, also known as the 9, and the 4th scale degree, also known as the 11, on that index finger. Since it's got those 4th and 7th scale degrees, we can technically think of this as a 7 sus4 chord, but it's the addition of that 9 that makes it an 11 chord. There's a deeper conversation to be had about this topic, but that's way beyond the scope of today's lesson. Anyway, since it's basically a sus4 chord and thus by definition has no third, it's technically neither a major nor a minor chord, since it sort of sits in that twilight zone between the two. That's why it kind of sounds like it floats, because it's literally floating between tonal possibilities until it resolves to something definite. In other words, it's a Schrodinger's chord. In practice, however, most of the time the ear will lean toward an implied major feel. Now with that 9, its true name should technically be a 9-11 chord, but as with a lot of jazz chords, we're sort of conveniently glossing over all those extra tones for brevity's sake. Now sometimes you're going to see this chord written in its slash chord version like this. I think of this version as more of a piano player's chord name, since all slash chords can be interpreted as two separate parts. First letter is the chord to be played with the right hand on piano, and the second letter is the single bass note to be played with the left. See how it's more of a piano mentality? Left hand, right hand, two separate instructions. You can think of it in this way on a guitar because there's your G triad right there. G, B, D with an A root, but you'd have to know your neck really thoroughly for this, and just knowing the chord as an 11 is way easier and less of a brain buster. In any case, anytime you see a slash chord featuring a major chord name, followed by a letter name a whole step up from that chord after the slash, you've basically got an 11 chord. For example, C/D. C is a major chord. D is the lowest sounding bass note a whole step above C. That makes this really a D11 chord. Or F/G. F is a major chord. G is the lowest sounding bass note a whole step above F. This is really a G11 chord. Okay, now let's take a look at that A root version. It's important to mention here that you will more often see this chord fingering listed as an 11 chord, and it's technically true since it checks off the list of requirements. Root, the 4 or 11, flat 7, a bonus 9 on that second string, and the 5th on that first string. However, if you want the actual A root version of the minimalistic exact chord we played before, you'll have to do this. It's a little less finger friendly, so when I need this chord, I usually go for the more common first version I showed you with that bar across. In either case, this is a personal decision which one you go for. But as with all chord form decisions you make, I recommend you just choose one and stick with it and don't look back, so muscle memory can do its thing instead of waffling back and forth between two versions. Obviously, comfort is a factor here, but I suggest you always go with the one you think sounds coolest, since it will be more fun to use in spite of the difficulty. This is one versatile little chord that travels really well across almost all genres and can be used almost anywhere experimentally, but first let's talk about its most common use as a tension builder as the 5 or dominant chord. If you saw my video on the 7 flat 9 chord, link below, you'll recall its use on the 5th scale degree as a tension-building chord to its corresponding root chord in a given key. The 11 chord can be used in the same way, but it's a lot more useful in everyday situations than that 7 flat 9. So as an example, let's use the key of E. E, F sharp, G sharp, A, and B is your 5th chord. So play a B11 chord and resolve it to its 1 chord, E. Now that's one handy use for the 11, but let's talk about an even more interesting use. The 11's identity as a sus4 chord means it can basically resolve to itself. In other words, A11, A major, tension, resolution. This trick can be used to create a lot of harmonic motion when you have a lot of the same chord in a row, or even just slip this in quickly to create a more busy sound. This trick is used all over the place in MJ's Rock With You. And as a final trick, since the 11 chord technically doesn't have a major or minor tonality, you're not necessarily restricted to staying in the normal diatonic chord box. The 11 chord can almost act in this way as a sonic ghost in the machine, floating around wherever it wants randomly, but your ear will accept it since it doesn't land on many places that cause a clash. This also makes it really easy to write songs with, because like a major 7 chord, you can just sort of slide it all over the place and get cool sounds. Can you see why I love this chord? I'm not only delighted when it comes along in a music chart, but I also just love throwing it in whenever I can to breathe new life into a song, even if it's not in the chart. So what chord do you want me to explore next? If there's a particular chord that's stumping you on where to use it, or you just are curious about what the heck some weird chord is that you stumbled across, put it in the comments section below and I'll consider making a video about it, especially if a lot of people ask for the same chord. Now, if most of the stuff I talked about in this lesson left you a bit confused, or you even got some of it but want to further sharpen your music theory knowledge and playing skills, I recommend checking out the links below for how to sign up for my online classes. If you like my teaching style, be sure to check out my channel for more tutorial videos and check the links below the videos for more teaching and music learning resources that I offer. I'm always adding to my video channel when I can, so check in often to see what's new. This is Tyson Farmer from TysonFarmer.com. Thanks for checking my channel out, and stay self-motivated and keep playing.